What's up, everyone? Welcome to our NHL Top 30 Forwards video, where we go through our lists of who we think are the top 30 forwards in the NHL, and then we debate them as we get ready for the 2021-2022 NHL season. So, let's start with honorable mentions here.
Yeah.
Who do you have as honorable mentions for forwards?
So it was tough for me to find a cutoff here. I have 5 guys.
Okay.
I originally had like 15.
Yeah,
I was able to get a cutoff here. So my 5 honorable mentions are Alex DeBrincat,
okay.
Andrei Svechnikov,
Yeah.
John Tavares, Johnny Gaudreau, and Gabriel Landeskog.
Okay.
What about you?
Mine are Anze Kopitar, Nikolai Ehlers,
Okay.
and Matty Barzal.
Okay.
So it gets really, when you look at kind of the lower end, there's a lot of guys that you could argue in the top 30.
Uh-huh.
And I just made arguments for different guys.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's fair. I'm going to kick it off. 30, I have Mark Scheifele.
Okay.
I feel like he's been a good all-around forward. Leans more towards the offensive side, but he's stable defensively.
Yeah.
He's been consistent in Winnipeg, consistently point a game. You can almost set your watch to the numbers he's going to put up. So he's a very dependable player.
Mm-hmm.
But to get him higher, he's just not, to me, that superstar.
Yeah.
To me, he's just that very stable first liner that you can build around because you know what you're going to get out of him. Who do you have at 30?
Well, that's lower than I thought you'd have Scheifele. But at number 30, I have Nick Backstrom.
Okay.
And Nick Backstrom may not be the most luster behind his name on this list.
Yeah.
But you can't really say he's a glue guy, even though he is, but he does make that Capitals forward group a whole lot better. In the past 3 years, he's ranked 15th in assists.
Yeah,
so
he's been the glue for Washington.
It's just the consistency. Year after year, you know what you're going to get from him, and it's always he's too skilled to be a glue guy, but he does have that capability of holding a forward core together.
So Backstrom, to me, who I have at 29, is a guy who's consistent, but if he's going to do anything, he's going to be better than you would expect. He never disappoints. Who do you have at 29?
At 29, I have Matthew Tkachuk.
Okay, I don't have him on my list, and I didn't even consider him, to be honest with you.
I think Matthew Tkachuk, he's put up, when you look at guys like Backstrom, he's put up the same point total in the past. Because a lot of my list falls on the past 3 seasons. Yeah. So you have the last complete season and then the 2 kind of half seasons there to kind of gauge.
Which you kind of need.
Yeah.
Now Yakupov had the most points in his career in 2013 during that shortened season.
Yeah.
So he's played 82 game seasons and
then there's other guys who have been injury prone and with the COVID scenario, and they've kind of had to step back. So I kind of went back 3 years to kind of build this list.
Yeah, it's a good mark.
And you compare Backstrom, they have the exact same point totals, and Matthew Tkachuk has almost developed that grit, that I wouldn't necessarily say he's one of the best two-way players, but he does have a two-way game to him. The physicality, I think, makes him a very valuable forward.
Yeah.
And makes him one of the better forwards in the league, and that's one of the big reasons why I have him at 29.
Okay, that's fair. Now, what you didn't mention with Backstrom is his two-way game is incredibly,
it is.
criminally
It really is.
underrated.
Yeah.
And Tkachuk, numbers obviously aren't everything. Yeah, you can use them. What left Tkachuk off my list is he's not as dynamic as Backstrom. He's not at least that on-ice leader that Backstrom is, because Tkachuk is able to do what he does because of Sean Monahan and Johnny Gaudreau. Although Tkachuk may be at points better than them. That's what leaves him off my list is Backstrom. He's got his cup. He's been stable, whereas you can't really say the same for Tkachuk, but
if we're arguing value, Backstrom is by far more valuable than Tkachuk.
Yeah.
But I think Tkachuk's offensive skills and the way that the game is trending offensively
He'll
now,
definitely
I
be
think
better.
It definitely puts him in a better spot than Backstrom. But again,
Backstrom is also, you should expect a decline.
Yeah, exactly. And Tkachuk, you should expect a rise. They're just at different ends of the spectrum in their career.
Fair enough. At 28, I have Mark Stone.
Okay.
On the wing, he's probably one of the best, if not the best, two-way forward options.
Yeah.
He can score, pretty consistent scoring-wise.
Yep.
Defensively, all around, could be better, which you wouldn't think to say because his takeaway
Yeah.
game is strong.
Yeah.
But as a shutdown defender, he doesn't have the rest of
Yeah.
the arsenal at like an elite like Patrice Bergeron level.
Yeah.
Which is a lot to expect out of a guy. But considering how some view him, I just want to throw that out there as to why I have him lower
Yeah.
than you would think.
Yeah.
Who do you have at 28?
28, I have Jake Gensel.
Okay.
And I think Jake Gensel, again, wildly consistent. His numbers have definitely helped playing alongside the likes of Malkin and Crosby.
Yeah,
They've
and that's
definitely
why
helped
I
boost
would have
his
left
numbers.
him off my
Yeah.
list. But even on his own, he can get the job done.
Exactly. I think he's kind of made his own. And especially when you compare him to other guys, and he's been a guy that's missed significant time too, but in terms of his numbers, he's kept up and stayed consistent with those guys
Yep.
in over 30 less games than some other guys have played.
Yep.
So I think in limited time he's been able to keep up, and yeah, his stats might have been boosted, but at the same time you still have to put up numbers even when you're with those guys. It's
Yeah.
not as easy as it seems. So
Oh,
that's
of
why I have
course.
Jake Gensel at 28.
I have his center, Evgeny Malkin, at 27. He's
Okay.
still got it offensively. It's injuries that kind of bring him down. And he's aging. He doesn't have that complete game.
Yeah.
But offensively, he's so dynamic and so dangerous. He
Yeah.
can make an impact at any moment. And just to mention, guys like Gensel and Kachuk, they'll be on my list, just not quite yet.
Yeah.
Because they're more proven players.
Fair enough.
But who do you have at 27?
So Malkin actually didn't make my list.
Okay.
He would have been, again, he's a guy that you could for sure argue towards the bottom of this top 30, but
Yeah.
was just one of those guys. Again, I only named 3 honorable mentions. Like you said before, there were really 15 guys that you could have mentioned that
Yeah.
you could argue on this list. And Malkin would be one of those, but I left him off.
Yep.
At 27, I have Johnny Gaudreau.
Okay.
And Johnny Gaudreau, his offensive numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys that I think what kind of draws people away from Johnny Gaudreau is just the fact that
He's one-dimensional.
he's one-dimensional, and he's also been almost framed as the problem in Calgary. He's one of the things that Johnny Gaudreau really can he take Calgary
Yeah,
where
so
they need to
he's
go in
not-
the playoffs? And
He's
I think
not
that
built to be a leader on a team.
No, he's
maybe
not.
a good second or third option, and
Yeah.
that's where the strain comes.
yeah.
Is he's not that guy.
Yeah.
But he's very good at what he does. It's just that I feel like in Calgary they're expecting too much out of him.
But at the end of the day, past 3 seasons, he's been top 15 in points.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things that even though he's one-dimensional, he plays the offensive game as good as a
he
lot
just
of
needs
people. So,
support or even a player above him
yeah.
to help out and take some of the strain off.
Yeah.
26, I have Sean Couturier,
Okay.
who is my favorite two-way forward, but
Yep.
not because he's my favorite. He's on this list. I think he's very dynamic on both ends of the ice.
Yep.
You can watch him shut down guys, and you can watch him be the leader of that Philadelphia offense at times, taking over the reins from guys like Jake Voracek
Yep.
and Claude Giroux, which is kind of tough, and you wouldn't expect for him to have done so soon, especially considering Claude Giroux is still pretty good.
Yeah.
So that's why I have Sean Couturier up there. Who do you have at 26?
26, I have Ovechkin.
Okay.
And this may be lower than a lot of people would think Ovechkin should be, as he is the greatest goal scorer of all time,
Yeah.
certainly of our generation.
Yeah.
And I think that's his one downfall. That's really all he does now.
Now, at least.
He is obviously, he's big. He can be physical. He's not going to be.
Yeah.
He doesn't play defense
Well,
really
no,
anymore.
he's still pretty physical.
He's pretty physical, but I mean, he's not going to be as much anymore.
It's tough to say. That's a big part of his game with the frame he has. He loves to hit. He loves to throw hits, but it's really hitting, and that's what helps him out defensively is his hitting aspect to the game, and that's why he's still able to be on these lists even at this age.
Yeah.
Of course, he's known for his goals, not so much his defense, and that's where he falls.
Yeah.
It's kind of tough to rank a guy like Ovechkin because you have to give him the eye test.
Yeah.
You can't just look at numbers because it can lead you one of two ways, either way too high or way too low.
Yeah. All I was saying is the focus is on goal scoring
Yeah.
now that he gets older, and that's what drops him
Yes.
down the list. He's still very capable of being a physical presence, not necessarily a defensive presence, but his focus now, especially with this new contract, is going to be goal scoring.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that you almost have to anticipate him lower. You could very well argue him higher on this list, but I'm going to argue him lower just because, Ovechkin is not a young guy anymore. He is going to start focusing on goal scoring, and I think that's been the trend of recent.
Yeah. At 25, I have Matthew Barzal, who you had in your honorable mentions, and if he's not in the Barry Trotz system, he'd be a lot higher because you'd see what he's able to do offensively. His first season, he had 85 points. John Tavares leaves, Barry Trotz takes over. It's a whole new look. They're a playoff team, back-to-back conference finalists, and he is easily their best forward.
Oh, for sure.
Arguably their best player.
As I think the Barry Trotz system is what kept him off my list, with the fact that they roll with depth at forward.
Yeah.
And it's really not going to be that one-man show. So.
Oh, of course. Like, think of the New Jersey teams that won Cups.
Exactly.
Who's Patrick Elias? Well, their best forward.
Yeah.
Anyways, who do you have at 25?
At 25, I have Stamkos.
Okay.
And Steven Stamkos is a guy, he's certainly capable of being higher, has been higher on lists that we've done on our own in the past.
Yeah.
But it's the injuries that bring him down. It's the fact that that he certainly has the skill, and if he is playing, and I think that's what puts him on this list for me, 100%, that if he's playing as many games as these guys, he's elite. He's elite. His numbers are going to be up there. His numbers are going to be top 10 in most categories.
Yep.
But it's the fact that he hasn't necessarily been able to put together a string of seasons where he's healthy for a while now, as injuries have kind of followed him, and that's what puts him lower on my list.
Yeah.
Just because it's hard to really gauge because it's a lot of what ifs. What if he's healthy? What will his numbers look like if he's healthy?
There's no certainty. And as great as he is, you have to keep in mind Tampa Bay has considered moving him at points.
Yeah.
So, those are things to look at. At 24, I have Mika Zibanejad, who is my first player I feel can rise on this list, and I feel is currently low.
Yeah.
He was on pace for 40 goals a season ago. We have to remember the numbers he put up were in spite of COVID.
Yeah.
So you saw at the bottom half of this past season, he started to step it up. Going into next season, Mika Zibanejad may not be in the Richard conversation, but he's probably going to be a second-tier goal scorer along with his great two-way game.
100%.
So that's where I see him rising. 24 for me is a conservative spot to have him. Who do you have at 24?
At 24, I have Mark Stone, and you've already mentioned Mark Stone here.
Yeah.
And I value his defensive game just a little bit more, but I do see your points that there are better two-way forwards, as a lot of people think that he's kind of the best of the best when it comes.
And he's just takeaways.
He's great. He's still great defensively.
He's like generational when it comes to takeaways.
And then his offense, just two-way wise, his offensive game is certainly there. One of the big parts of Vegas is scoring forward depth there. I have him at 24. I think it's just I value his defensive game maybe just a little bit more.
Yeah, but either way, there isn't much of a gap between the guys we're mentioning here.
Yeah, it's the same arguments for me.
Yep. Ryan O'Reilly's who I have at 23.
Okay.
Very consistent offensively, but he's not quite elite offensively.
Yeah.
I would say as great as he is offensively, he's actually a defensive forward in my opinion because he's that good defensively. So that's why I have him where I have him. He was that Conn Smythe winner while scoring the most points on a very potent St. Louis offense, a very deep St. Louis offense. He's their guy now, and I'm not sure where St. Louis is headed if they can continue to make deep runs.
Yeah.
But Ryan O'Reilly is going to be a guy they rely on going forward. Who do you have at 23?
23, I have Mikko Rantanen.
Okay.
And Mikko Rantanen is probably one of the best scorers on this list.
Yeah.
I think his numbers have been boosted a little bit playing next to the likes of Landeskog and McKinnon.
But it goes both ways.
But it does go both ways. And I just think in this case that out of the three of them, he's probably the second most skilled, but they certainly all help each other out.
Yes, I 100% agree. Yeah. And that's why I have him at 22.
And at the same time, too, there is still, when you look at games played over the past 3 seasons, you look at other guys, he has played less games, and it's just been because of injuries, too.
Yeah.
And he's also very young. He's a guy that certainly will rise on my list.
So that's one thing that's tough in Colorado is they rely so much on these guys.
Yeah.
Especially McKinnon and Rantanen.
Yeah.
They're going to go through injuries. But
for sure.
Who do you have at 22?
And at 22, I have Kyle Connor.
So another guy I didn't think of because I feel like he's like 3 or 4 on Winnipeg's depth chart.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead and
Winnipeg just has a really deep team.
yeah.
And there's a lot of guys from Winnipeg that you could argue as they just have great forward depth.
Yeah.
Kyle Connor has been a guy that I think his scoring rate has been one of the higher points in the league. He's sixth in the past 3 years in goals scored right now. And I think that's Kyle Connor is a guy that playing in such a deep system, I think he gets overlooked a lot. But I think Kyle Connor's goal scoring ability is what puts him on the list for me.
He's incredibly dangerous. You saw what he did in Edmonton when it seemed like that game was going forever in game 4.
Yeah.
He had no juice left.
Yeah.
Somehow still gets that speed going.
Exactly.
Gets a nice breakaway, scores, ends the series. He's that kind of guy, dangerous, a threat on both ends of the ice.
Yeah.
Mainly offensively, you wouldn't think it, but he's had 40 goals in a season.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that's a bad pick. The only thing for me is I feel until now, both Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler have been better.
Yep.
Just for now, but we'll see how it all plays out going forward. He's another guy that will crack my list in the future. At 21, that's where I have Ovechkin.
Okay.
For all the reasons you mentioned. Great goal scoring, generational goal scoring. I think this is where we're going to start seeing his decline. So I have him as high as I could.
Yeah.
Because I know it's kind of, a guy like Ovechkin's kind of tough to drop.
Yeah.
But I think now is where he's going to start trending downwards because, like you said, his game's very one-dimensional. That new contract, the focus, even Washington, they want him to get that record. Whenever he gets close to breaking one, the focus is on getting him goals. And to me, I feel that's a strain on Washington, at least in the regular season.
Yep.
So those are the kind of things that are going to continue to drop him. But if he can just play solid hockey with a great Washington team, win some cups, not focus about points, I think he can slow down that decline.
Yeah.
Who do you have at 21?
At 21, this is where I have John Tavares. Now, you mentioned Tavares in your honorable mentions here.
Yeah.
I just think he's one of those guys that there are guys underneath him that aren't on this list that you can argue probably up until that point.
Yep.
It's very tight in there. John Tavares is just a very well-balanced player.
Yes.
Top 10 in goals within the past 3 seasons.
Yep.
And he's certainly one of those guys that there are guys around him playing with Mitch Marner. Mitch Marner makes him better, but he also makes Mitch Marner better in a lot of ways too.
Of course, yeah.
As like we said before with Rantanen and McKinnon, it's one of those situations where it goes both ways. He helps other players have helped him. I think Toronto has wildly helped his career.
Yep.
Not that it necessarily needed helping coming out of New York, but he certainly has benefited from playing in a high caliber offensive system in Toronto.
Yeah. So the reason why Tavares didn't make my list is I wouldn't say he's going through a decline, but there's a step back in numbers. As of now, this is the first time in his career he's not a first-line center. And he's also not playing with Mitch Marner anymore. Marner and Matthews are the pairing. He's on the second line with Nylander.
Yep.
So he's not as relied upon. So I think in Toronto, with him clearly being their third option, playing that two-way game, it's going to suppress him. But that's also what they need to win cups. But with him being suppressed, I can't argue him above guys that are simply having a higher output. But as a talent, where you have him is completely rational.
Yep.
At 20, I have Sebastian Aho, who he can score goals. He's like Zibanejad, where he can score goals. He has a sound two-way game. He's a team player, right? He was drafted as a left winger.
Yep.
Carolina needed a center, so he developed that game, and now he's an elite center. That team, in my opinion, is built around this guy, and I think that's the right pick. Despite having guys like Jake Slavin, they've had Hamilton, they have Svechnikov.
Yeah.
This is the guy for them, and he should be because he's a complete player. He leads that Carolina team that's built on depth and two-way play.
Yep.
Who do you have at 20?
At 20, I have Mika Zibanejad. And so again, you made the arguments there comparing him to Aho, all-around team player, good on both ends of the ice. And again, like you mentioned, when you brought up Zibanejad, he's definitely a guy that can rise up this list.
I think he should be pushing top 10.
Yeah, he has the skill to do that. And now it's just a matter of can he string together these seasons consistently to push him into the top 10, because he certainly has the skill to do it.
Yep. At 19 is where I have Elias Pettersson.
Okay.
And his numbers were down this year because of COVID.
Yeah.
But outside of that, you saw him starting to bounce back. You've seen what he can do in the past.
Yep.
Since he came in his rookie season, this is the range I've had Pedersen.
Yep.
Because he's that good, he's that stable. His offensive output's consistent.
Yep.
Outside of COVID, but he also plays a two-way game, and that's why I have him above Aho. Because I think in terms of young two-way forwards,
Yep.
he's probably the best.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you have at 19?
At 19, this is where I have Ryan O'Reilly.
Okay.
As I think Ryan O'Reilly, again, his two-way game, his defensive game is really the strength of his two-way game, but he still puts up points offensively. As 192 points over the past three seasons is something that is certainly up there amongst the top end of
He's probably
of
like
forwards.
a fourth tier scorer.
Yeah. But it's the fact that his defense is top notch amongst forwards. So I think his defense is what pushes him up on this list.
Yep. The fact that he can still get the job done offensively.
Exactly.
Totally makes sense. At 18, another guy that should be pushing the top 10, Jack Eichel.
Yeah.
I don't know what to make of him going into this season. You saw what he could do at the beginning of the Buffalo season. He was fantastic.
Yeah.
Buffalo wasn't fantastic, but they were still pretty good.
Yep.
Him and his teammates were putting up numbers. He took a 7th rounder in Victor Olofsson, made him a deadly scoring threat.
He makes people around him better.
So he has that Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid talent,
Yeah.
but he's never had the surrounding pieces.
Yeah.
With him coming off of injuries and a lot of uncertainty, I had him as low as I could argue him.
So at 16, I have Alexander Barkov. And we've said it for so many guys. He is just a team player. He does make the guys around him better. His two-way game is fantastic. He's been a Selke nominee. I think Barkov has been outshined by a couple of guys in Florida and has been outshined by guys that fall outside of our list when it comes to the goal scoring of Duclair, when it comes to the goal scoring and the rise of Sam Bennett. It's those types of storylines that, he's not necessarily the one that's putting the puck in the net, but he's the one that is creating the plays that put the puck in the net. And that's why I think that Barkov, in my opinion, he's a little underrated than what he should be. And that's why I have him pushing the top 15.
Okay. So at 15, I have Patrice Bergeron.
Okay.
It's injuries that drop him talent-wise, because playing defense is a talent.
Yeah.
And since the emergence of Pasternak and even Marchand, his offensive game has been at a higher level. Mm-hmm. But defensively, I think he's kind of set the tone for two-way and defensive forwards, as he's kind of the guy that people are looking up to develop their games.
Yeah.
And talent-wise, he probably is pushing top 10, maybe looking in through the window. He's not quite there for me, but again, it's injuries that drop him to 15. Who do you have at 15?
At 15, I have Braden Point.
Okay.
And Braden Point, again, wildly consistent, a great offensive player, great scoring. Definitely can do it on both ends of the ice as well. He's very capable on both ends. And he's just a big reason why we can say that Tampa Bay is our back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. He's very much made the most of his opportunities there, and is certainly, in my opinion, one of the best forwards in Tampa Bay, and has been, over the past 3 years, has been the most consistent of the forwards in Tampa Bay.
Yep. At 14, I have Anze Kopitar, who you had in your honorable mentions.
Yeah.
For me, I wasn't hard on him and Drew Doughty because LA's been so poor, but they've still remained good.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that he's in his decline yet. I don't think he is.
No.
He had a good offensive season, and of course, you had that sound, beautiful two-way game from him.
Yep.
That really follows in my last guy, Patrice Bergeron's footsteps.
Yeah.
Who do you have at 14?
At 14, and actually, let's just go to Kopitar right now, as he's a guy that, he could very well be at different spots on my list, and I don't mind him there. I just think that the fact that this happened the fact that LA struggles happen now, he is towards the back end of his career now.
Yes.
So he is past his prime at this point.
I would say he's in the bottom part of his prime.
Bottom part of it, he's exiting his prime.
Yes.
And I can't see him. He obviously didn't do enough because he has been higher on my lists in the past. Mm-hmm. He hasn't done enough to rise, but I think it's more just other guys have just excelled further. It's not
Okay.
necessarily that his game has come down.
Yeah.
Obviously, LA's game as a whole has come down.
Yeah.
But Anze Kopitar is a guy that he almost cracked. Like if there was a 31, it'd be Anze Kopitar for me. He almost cracked my top 30.
Yeah.
And I think certainly the guys around him will take a lot of defensive pressure off of him with guys like Philippe Deneau coming in.
Yeah.
So he can focus more on the skills that he has.
And just giving him some time to rest.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's just been overworked and has had to have been overworked to really
Yeah.
lead this kind of ragtag bunch of young stars and just misfits here in LA. So
Yep. Anyways, who do you have at 14?
at 14, I have Mitch Marner.
Okay.
And I think Mitch Marner, his playmaking skills are certainly there. You've mentioned a lot of the points that I would have mentioned for Mitch Marner.
Mm-hmm.
He is one of the top options there when it comes to scoring. Now that he's playing with Matthews, has certainly elevated Matthews to that 40-goal scorer, and that Rocket Richard trophy he got this year
Yep.
was a big reason why.
40 goals in 56 games.
Exactly, he one of the best playmaking forwards in the league right now. So that's why I have Mitch Marner at 14.
Yep. At 13, I have Jonathan Huberdeau, who at points has looked better than Barkov, who I have higher than him.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I don't is defensively he's not the stud Barkov is, but offensively
Yeah,
he's elite. He's up there. He's so explosive, and he's been consistent, getting better every year it seems.
Yeah.
So if he can take another step, Florida looks dangerous because this is a team that gave Tampa trouble without Aaron Ekblad.
exactly.
Who do you have at 13?
And that's who I have at 13 is Jonathan Huberdeau. I
Yeah.
think that's when I was talking about guys that have kind of outshone Alexander Barkov. It has
Offensively.
been Huberdeau. Offensively, yes. Huberdeau is one of those guys that does make the guys around him better.
It
And
takes a huge load off Barkov to focus
Exactly.
more on defense, to focus more on making the guys around him better.
Yeah.
Because you can trust that Huberdeau's going to get the offensive job done, take on that offensive load as a left winger too.
Exactly.
I
yeah.
think he's one of the best. So at 12, I have Brad Marchand, who I feel is Boston's most valuable player. Not their best. I feel that's Pasternak, who I have higher.
Okay.
But he definitely helps them on both ends of the ice. He helps Bergeron be a better defensive forward. He helps Pasternak be a better offensive forward. And they get the numbers and the production they do because he gets into the dirty areas. And he's just so explosive, right? He's been 100-plus point scorer.
Mm-hmm.
He's been in the top tier of goal scoring, along with being phenomenal defensively.
Mm-hmm.
He's, if not elite, he's pushing towards that defensively. I don't know how you can't argue him higher and arguably above Pasternak. But I haven't quite been able to do that yet because I feel Pasternak's so explosive. Anyways, who do you have at 12?
At 12, I have Patrice Bergeron.
Okay.
And I think Patrice Bergeron, offensively, I think a lot has been taken away just due to the fact that he's playing with Marchand and Pasternak, and I think the injuries have taken away from that. But defensively, it's going to be hard to find a better defensive forward than Patrice Bergeron, and he has been that for his entire career.
Yep.
And I think that defense has made him one of the most valuable pieces in Boston, and is one of the. When you talk about, it seems like every year Boston is kind of in the mix to win a cup, and I think he's arguably the biggest reason why. I think without him, things sort of fall apart in that forward core. So that's why I have him at number 12. I value his defensive game so highly.
Yep, totally fair. At 11, this is where I have Braden Point because he's, in my opinion, the third most explosive forward.
Yeah.
Behind McKinnon and McDavid, who we'll get to.
Yeah.
He's so fast. He's so good defensively. I think he was up there in Conn Smythe voting 2 seasons ago.
Yeah.
Have to say that because they went back-to-back because of this guy.
Yep.
Think he's their second best forward behind Kucherov, which, I mean, it's hard to be better than Kucherov.
Yeah.
But he allows Kucherov to do what he does. Kucherov allows Point to do what he does.
Yep.
Who do you have at 11?
At 11, I have Artemi Panarin.
Okay.
So Artemi Panarin is a guy that I wanted to argue in the top 10.
Yeah.
And I think certainly has the skill to be in the top 10.
Okay.
But it's one of those things that I don't have any knocks against Panarin. He certainly is a top-end talent, but I just think the top end of it gets so tight. I think really from 15 upwards is from 15 to 5.
It's forwards.
It's
easily
forwards.
the toughest list.
It's
because,
hard. And it's going to have the most discrepancies.
Yeah, this is where it's really hard to judge offensive and defensive talent. And especially when you have to put it together and rank these guys, it's nearly impossible.
Because you had Kopitar at
14.
At 14. I had him at 31. So it's one of those things that you can make arguments to put them everywhere. And
no, I won't roast you for that one.
Panarin, it's nothing against his ability. I just think the guys ahead of him do a lot more for the guys around him than Panarin does. Panarin is really as there's a couple guys that maybe, again, Panarin is a top 10 talent, but there's a lot of guys that are top 10 talent. Not everyone can make the top 10. And that's all I'm going to say about Panarin there. Yeah. He certainly is one of the elite scorers in the NHL right now. So that I have Panarin at 11.
It's tough. I can tell that hurts you.
It does hurt. It does hurt.
At 10, I have Sasha Barkov, Alexander Barkov, Alex Barkov, whatever you want to call him. Yeah. Florida does what they're able to do because of him. Yeah. Like you mentioned about Patrice Bergeron, he's that defensive sound forward. Yeah. He's that offensive forward. But Huberdeau's able to do what he does because Barkov's backing him up. Yeah. If Huberdeau doesn't perform like that, Barkov's numbers would be up. It's not that long ago he was a 90-point scorer. Yeah. The emergence of Huberdeau hasn't diminished Barkov. It's just made Florida an all-around better team.
It's only excelled his defensive game.
Yeah. And it's excelled Barkov as a Selke nominee. Yep. As if you remember a couple years ago when he had that 94-point season, he didn't get it because of how good he was offensively. Yeah. Otherwise, he should have. Yeah. Right? Because they're like, this guy's too offensive. He was more a Hart nominee, which is kind of weird to think. Yeah. Too good offensively to get a Selke, but that's how ridiculous Barkov is. Yeah. He needs to get the job done, he will, but he doesn't because him and Huberdeau are such a good tandem. Yeah. Like Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane were.
100%.
Who do you have at 10? Oh, and this is our top 10.
And this is our top 10, yeah.
So I kicked it off with Barkov.
At number 10, I have Jack Eichel. And here's where I wanted to put Panarin in the top 10, but I also had to take in the Buffalo factor with Jack Eichel. Yeah. As Buffalo is just so bad.
I'll tell you this right now. I think Jack Eichel can compete for at least the third spot in terms of centers behind McDavid and McKinnon.
He has the skill, and that's the thing. If you look at his numbers, injuries and the fact he is playing in Buffalo would probably trend him lower than the top 10. Mm-hmm. But when you factor in the fact that he has poor talent, he's had poor talent around him in a mismanaged system, and injuries, it's one of those things where when he's on the ice, he's just so good. Like it's really hard to describe everything that Jack Eichel is.
I mean, Mark Scheifele as a player, who I feel is the best hockey mind, again, in terms of players. Yeah. Said a couple seasons ago, Jack Eichel is the most valuable player to his team. Oh, for sure. So a guy that 100%. Plays against him, that knows the game both in terms of stats, in terms of nerd stuff, but also in terms of visually seeing it, is raving about Jack Eichel being more important than guys of the likes of Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid, and Nathan McKinnon. Yeah. 10's a great spot to have him. Yeah, and he should push higher.
And again, why I was so upset with putting Panarin outside the top 10 is he has put up far better numbers than Eichel has. But I think
he's
obviously
in a way better
this isn't a most valuable list because that would change our list entirely. Yeah. But I think you do have to take value in some context, and that's why I have Jack Eichel at 10.
Good pick. At 9, this is where I have David Pastrnak, who I feel is, along with Matthews, the best goal scorer right now. Yep. I love that they're both in the same division and they have the opportunity to battle it out in game and on leaderboards. Pasternak's just so dynamic offensively. Yep. He's just such a threat. You have to be afraid every time he's on the ice. Mm-hmm. $6 million is a steal for this guy who could be making 12 plus.
Oh, for sure.
Who do you have at 9?
At 9, I have Crosby. I put Crosby. Wow. I put Crosby lower again because a lot of the guys ahead of him are at they're well into their prime, where again, like we said with Kopitar, he's towards the end of his prime. And again, he is Sidney Crosby. His prime is obviously going to be different than Kopitar.
Crosby and again, is in his decline.
Yeah, he is in his decline. And again, like I said, really from 5 to 15, it's so close for me. Okay. As it's one of those things where, it's not about, as we talked about it before we started, it's not necessarily about their placement, it's who's ahead of them. And I think the guys ahead of them have just shown of recently that they have just that little bit more skill right now. Obviously, Crosby in his prime is well up on this, like the Heat.
Crosby in his prime's number one.
Exactly.
No question.
No question. But
he's
again,
not in his prime. He's not that same
anymore.
Crosby. Totally fair.
And that's why I have him at 9. But again, everyone else is so close. It's picking at hairs here.
Okay, at 8, I have Austin Matthews.
Okay.
Just won the Maurice Richard. Like I said, in every single video we mentioned Toronto players, they all got dropped because they can't get out of that first round.
Yeah.
So at this point for Toronto, Matthews can go out and score 70 goals next season.
Yeah.
If they lose in the first round, he's not moving up my list.
No.
That's the reality of it.
For sure.
I love Austin Matthews. I think he's great. Physically, he may not throw the body, but he's hard to knock off the puck like Alex Barkov.
Yeah.
Playmaking, it's not what you thought you were getting when he was drafted, but it's still there to a degree.
Yeah.
Offensively, he's great, and as he continues to develop his pretty good defensive game, that's where he should climb, but they got to get out of the first round for him to get where he should be on this list.
Exactly.
Who do you have at 8?
At 8, I have Austin Matthews. Again, I won't go into it as much, but he has skyrocketed up my list after that 40-goal season in a shortened season in 56 games.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the supporting cast around him certainly helped him get there, but he just has that raw skill anyways that you'd think that
he could go anywhere and make anybody better.
Exactly.
He made a first line in his rookie season. He made a first line out of Zach Hyman and Connor Brown on his wings.
Exactly.
Great players, hardworking players, but not talents you would think like Mikko Rantanen or Gabriel Landeskog that help out McKinnon. So
and I think his two-way game is slightly underrated. Obviously, he is known more.
His offensive game's overrated.
Yeah.
His two-way game's underrated.
He's obviously, we've mentioned a lot of better two-way forwards than Austin Matthews. But Austin Matthews he can hold his own on defense too and do it very well. So
Yep. At 7, I have his buddy Patrick Kane.
Okay.
Who I feel has been excelled, and I don't want to get into why I have him lower. I'll get into that in my other picks, but he's been so dynamic offensively. He's still got it, and the game he plays, even when he exits his prime, he's going to continue to put up numbers because he's such a threat. He's so smart. He has great vision. Patrick Kane is the closest thing you'll get to seeing what Wayne Gretzky would do in this generation.
Yeah.
Wayne Gretzky is easily the greatest player to ever play the game of hockey.
Yep.
And seeing that kind of player now, he has to be where he is at 7 for me. Who do you have at 7?
At 7, this is where I have David Pastrnak.
Okay.
And David Pastrnak, obviously.
He's won around, so it's totally fair to have him above Matthews.
Yeah. As I think Austin Matthews put up the goal scoring that this season that we're used to seeing out of David Pastrnak. So, and I think Pastrnak has done that a little more. He's been a little more of a sure goal scorer for just that little bit longer. But again, it's like picking hairs here, but his offensive game is fantastic. He certainly is one of the more valuable pieces in Boston. Again, if not the most, you can make the argument he is the most valuable piece.
What you have to remember is Pastrnak, even if he's not putting up numbers, he's playing a defensive system.
Yeah.
So to me, it's actually a shame if Matthews doesn't put up more goals because that's what he's relied upon for.
Yeah.
Bergeron and Marchand are both better scorers, in my opinion, than Marner. Maybe not better than Tavares, but they're all in the same tier.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyways, at 6, this is where I have Leon Draisaitl, who's so fantastic offensively. But where I kind of drop him is he plays under McDavid. But even without McDavid, he was absolutely ridiculous a season ago, winning the Art Ross and the Hart Memorial, the Ted Lindsay, as he should have. But I just feel his defensive game holds him back. And he did what he did alongside Nuge and Yamamoto, which is a great line.
Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me that he got the points he did without McDavid.
Yeah.
But it's the defensive game that holds me back from having him rise my list. Who do you have at 6?
At 6, I have Brad Marchand.
Okay.
And Brad Marchand has consistently been within the top end of his offensive game. And like you said before, he does get into the dirty areas. He's a guy that you love that he's your teammate, but you hate that he's your opponent.
Yep.
He's one of those guys that I think you said before that Brad Marchand, like you said before, that Patrice Bergeron is their best player. I think Brad Marchand's their best player.
No. I said Marchand's their most valuable player. Pasternak's their best player.
Sorry.
Or most talented, at least.
Whereas I think Brad Marchand is
Both
their best forward. No,
best.
I think Bergeron is their most valuable forward.
Okay.
Just because of his two-way game.
Yeah.
But I think Brad Marchand is their best forward. I think that it's harder to replace Bergeron, but I think Brad Marchand, his offensive game, I think he's more offensively skilled. I think he's just a more skilled player than Patrice Bergeron.
I was waiting for the last Bruin to get off the board just to kind of unravel here. Something I've been holding back in terms of Bergeron is he gets injured every year, but Boston doesn't miss a step.
Yeah.
Why that is because of Marchand. Pasternak's been injured. They still don't miss a step. You take Marchand out of the mix.
It's a fair point.
It's pretty much over for Boston once Marchand goes. That's why I feel he's easily their most valuable. But why I have him below Pasternak is because Pasternak's just so talented.
Yeah.
And that guy I would build around before I'd build around Marchand because he has a great arsenal offensively. Yeah. Anyways, getting into the top 5, and where I was talking about Patrick Kane is I don't feel the Patrick Kane we see today would be the guy he is without Artemi Panarin. Okay. You saw Patrick Kane, he was always elite offensively, but he started putting up generational consistency in terms of offense when Panarin came into the league and helped Patrick Kane break out to that Art Ross season. And since then, he hasn't gone back, but you see what Panarin does every team he goes to. He made Chicago better. He made Columbus better. He made New York better. And I think the fit in New York, when he signed that contract, I would say I didn't like it. But since seeing him play and how he fits, being so dynamic offensively, being able to make the players around him more dynamic and produce at a higher clip, I think that's why he's this good. And defensively, I can totally understand where he gets argued down, but Panarin's just so incredible. Yeah. I think he's the next Patrick Kane.
It's a fair point. And as you say that, Patrick Kane falls at number 5 for me.
Yeah.
And I think it's just been his offensive game has altered from just a primary goal scorer to, again, he's one of the big reasons why Alex DeBrincat is where he is now.
100%.
And I think he was especially relied upon for that playmaking when Jonathan Taves went out this year.
Chicago almost made the playoffs.
Exactly.
And that was almost single-handedly done by Patrick Kane, who had a great partner to bring it to pass the puck to.
For sure. And over the past 3 seasons, he's been third in scoring, so he hasn't sacrificed his offensive game.
Yeah.
He's just started expanding into different areas of his offensive game.
Yep.
He's not necessarily going to be that 50-goal scorer that we expect. He's just a more well-rounded offensive player. And in my opinion, he's a better player than he was when he got into the league. So
100%. Better leader, too.
Yeah.
At 4, I have Nikita Kucherov.
I also have him at 4.
Yeah, so he didn't win the Conn Smythe this year, nor did he do it last year. But in terms of forwards, he's been their best and most dangerous.
Yeah.
At points, Point has been more valuable.
Yep.
In a way, Marchand has been to Boston.
Yep.
But Kucherov's just so dynamic. He put up a historic season, scoring 136 points. In the year, they got 62 wins, and that's because of the tandem of him and Point.
Yeah.
He'll continue to be great. Thankfully, Point's younger, so he'll never have to worry about having that center.
Yeah.
They're just such a great pairing.
Yeah.
Why do you have him at 4?
I have Kucherov here for all the reasons you stated. But the only thing I'm going to add on here is the fact that he really without his playoff performance this year, he probably falls out just outside of my top 5. But he came in, missed the entire season, so that's one of the things that maybe pushes him outside of the top 3. But he came in like he didn't miss a beat. It was just the same old Kucherov there, and it just shows that he's going to have that skill regardless of the circumstances that year, regardless of if you missed an entire season. He just looks same old Kucherov, and Tampa Bay doesn't get to that point. I don't think Tampa Bay necessarily gets past Florida without Kucherov playing the way he does.
No, Kucherov on the power play, you couldn't stop him.
No, you can't.
Offensively, you can't stop him, especially when he's playing his best. Again, I don't know if I already mentioned, but he had that historic 136-point season.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, 62 wins.
Yeah.
It's because of him and Brayton Point.
Yeah.
Moving on to number 3, you had him quite lower than I did. This is where I have Sidney Crosby, and this is his decline.
Yeah.
And I have him at my 3 spot. You still have him in the top 10.
Yeah.
And again, this is him in his decline.
Yeah.
So this guy's fantastic, and what keeps him up is his hockey sense on both ends of the ice.
Oh, yeah.
He can still put up points. He still gets his team into the playoffs. And it's his two-way game that every year seems to get better as he ages. So even if his offensive numbers are coming down, he's still playing a great and defensively sound game. What hurts him are the first-round exits, but that's more a lack of depth.
Yeah.
That's not on him, Chris Letang, or Evgeny Malkin. I think it's the surrounding pieces that are lacking in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. And the one thing I will say about Crosby is I've always admired Crosby's offensive game because he's one of those guys that plays better when he goes towards contact. He plays.
Yeah.
It's one you see a lot of guys who put up big offensive numbers. They avoid contact.
Yes,
whereas
like
he goes
Patrick
right
Kane,
at defenders.
Panarin,
Goes right at defenders, and that's what makes these highlight reel goals.
Despite injuries, he's so strong.
Yeah,
He's so physical.
And his strength is something that people don't talk about enough. And it's that thing that he knows how to absorb contact. He knows how to play through contact.
He's so strong on his skates, and he's strong on the puck.
And there's not a lot of modern offensive players that would be able to do that.
Yep.
And I don't think that you're never going to see a guy like Crosby again. He really is his own.
And yeah, what makes it tough is you're comparing him to guys like McDavid, who is 24 years old.
Yeah.
Crosby's a lot older and a lot stronger.
Yeah.
Than these young guys coming in, and that's where, although he's in a decline, you can't stop him because even defensemen now are getting smaller.
Yeah.
Although you need big defensemen to win cups, a lot of the new guys coming in, that's where it's tough, and that's where I think he can still stay.
Yeah.
This high. Now at 3, who do you have?
At 3, I have Leon Draisaitl.
Yeah.
And I think you had him at 6. I have him at 3 because I really think his numbers just
he's
speak
deadly.
for himself. He's just a deadly scorer.
Yep.
Just a deadly playmaker. Makes guys on his line better. He does play under McDavid, and that will always. He'll never exceed McDavid.
Like Malkin never exceeded Crosby,
exactly, and that will hurt his value a bit. But I just think the fact that he's been able to hold his own and be the second highest scorer of recent in the past, he had his Art Ross year. He had his Hart year. It's Draisaitl
just like Evgeny Malkin.
Yeah,
and that's a perfect spot to have him because these guys are so much like Crosby and Malkin.
And yeah, you can't look too deep into numbers, but you also can't overlook numbers. He just puts up numbers, and I think he's just deadly offensively, and that's why he has to be in my top
dangerous.
3.
In my opinion, he's a better version of Pasternak, who, I mean, makes the top 9 for me because he's so talented.
Yeah.
At 2 and 1, probably have the same guys. Let's just start with 2. We have Nathan McKinnon here.
He's also at 2 for me.
Yeah. Where you can start to argue, I'm not saying he's number 1, but where you can start to argue him at 1 is his two-way game.
Yep.
He's so dynamic. He's the guy who I feel is the second most dynamic player in the NHL.
Yep. Offensively,
you can't stop him when he goes in because he comes in with speed and a deadly shot, which is another thing McDavid doesn't have. McKinnon can do anything on the ice. He can play defense, he can play make, he can score. And like Sid, he's pretty strong. They work out together. So if you're looking for the next Sidney Crosby, it's not going to be McDavid. It's going to be Nathan McKinnon.
Exactly.
And just because of that, that's why I have him at number 2. What he needs to do to get that one spot, which, believe it or not, I feel is possible. I'm not saying it will happen. It's possible. He needs to win a cup.
Yeah.
And he needs to get out of the second round. He needs to excel in the playoffs. His team does. He's not the issue. He's been phenomenal. But he needs his team. He needs to make the team around him better somehow.
Yeah.
Anything you have to add?
No, you really hit the nail on the head. There's really not a whole lot to add when you're talking about the top 2 here. You know, he is arguably one of the best one of the best on both ends of the ice, and to do it at such a high caliber, I think there's...
To be able to play a defensive game and put up the offensive numbers he does, it's just insane.
He's hard to play against.
But Connor McDavid, you can't stop him. Fastest guy in the league.
Yep.
Up there in terms of playmaking, he'll get you the most assists because he can get into areas and get into opportunities other players can't.
Yep.
His vision lacks a bit. His scoring lacks a bit. Defensively, I think he has another gear. So when there's talks of McDavid improving, at 24, he most certainly can. He most certainly will.
Yeah.
But even with the skill set he has now, you can't stop him. You can stop his team, but you can't stop Connor McDavid.
No. And you mentioned it before when you're talking about McKinnon, that McKinnon is going to be the closest thing we see to Crosby.
Yep.
And I think McDavid is the closest thing we're going to see to Gretzky. Like, you look at clips of them side by side, they skate the same way. And you look at their numbers too. He is more of an assist guy. He's making guys around him better. Because Gretzky's scoring game, you can argue, there are a lot of better goal scorers than Gretzky, but just overall offensive dominance. There was no one as dominant as Gretzky, and there's going to be no one...
That's why he has the most goals of all time, although he's not the greatest scorer of all time. Where I disagree with you, I don't think we've ever seen a talent like Connor McDavid that's so explosive, right? Because he's so fast, but his hands match. There's never been a combination like that. And my pastor says this all the time, is he seems to skate faster with the puck.
Yeah.
It's insane to watch this guy move, watch the way he plays. This is a guy you have to see play because you're never going to see anything like it, and you've never seen anything like it before.
Yeah.
To me, there's no comparison.
He's a once-in-a-generation talent.
Yeah.
So with that, that'll do it for our NHL Top 30 Forwards list here. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like the video, give it a like down below. Subscribe so you don't miss any of our other uploads. Comment down below what you think of our lists and who you would have in your top 30. Who do you think we have a little too high, too low? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And thanks again for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.